Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Your Two Big Sisters. I'm Elizabeth,
And I'm Sukhmani.
and this is a follow up to a previous episode where we talked about what it means to have a safety net. And the question that we left off was how would one create a safety net and what does that actually look like? And I think I can start off today, Suk, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
I I've been watching a lot of financial videos on YouTube and just reels and everything that's kind of come along my different social medias. I think that there's a lot of conversations about our generation specifically and whether we know how to save or not and whether we truly are capable handling money in the same way that previous generations were. I don't know if there's actually any merit to that, but I do think that there is a lot to say as to whether finances create a good safety net or not. And I personally do think so. I don't know if others do. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be making a lot in your current job to be in a safety net situation, but it does mean that you have to understand your finances. And what I mean by that is you truly do have to budget and you have to know where each dollar is going in and where each dollar is going out. I think
Hmm.
that a lot of people take the whole budgeting thing for granted and they say, oh, this is an old wives' tale. We don't actually need to do this. I fully disagree with that because I was that
Yeah.
type of person. I never budgeted. I completely just did not care. I was in the mindset of you only live once. And then I started budgeting. And then I realized, wow, I could still live the same comfortable life that I was spending money, going out with friends, etc. But now I also had a control of my finances and I wasn't as stressed. And I think that's the biggest aspect of it. I think holding yourself accountable and understanding why you're spending the way you are and making sure that your future self is also taken care of. I think that's the best way to get ahead of that stress that everyone I think in this world has, no matter how rich you are. I think finances at the end of the day play a part in everyone's life. And so making sure that you're budgeting, but then also taking advantage of the different programs that governments have. So whether that's in Canada, for example, TFSA, RSP, I think in the States called a Roth IRA, anything
Yeah.
along those lines, really making sure that you understand how those work. You don't necessarily need to be putting a lot of money in it, but at some point, especially I think after undergrad, when you are in a full-time employment, it is really important to be taking care of those.
Yeah, I mean, I echo to everything that you said times a thousand. I think that in previous generations, the mentality was always to hold on to money, and to some extent, it's not wrong. You should save. But I think that there's ways to make it easier. And I mean, I'm a big fan. I like to automate my savings. So, every single time a paycheck hits, like, I don't even see it. It just hits certain accounts like my 401k, my Roth, my high yield savings, my brokerage. I think that also just makes it easier. Like, I don't have to think
That's
about it
interesting
because
that
I'm
you
not
say
seeing
that
it.
because
Yeah.
I'm the opposite. I need to go and manually do it and see where everything is going. And I get personally, I love having to manually do it. So that's really interesting that we're the exact
Yeah.
opposite on that.
No, it is interesting. I will say for my high yield, I have it that way because the APR is so much stronger. Like there's like a whole thing with SoFi, like they will almost, I think the percentage is like 0.5% more if you direct
Mhm.
deposit. So I kind of just got in the habit of that, but I think it's easier because I was trying to teach myself this year. I was like, especially now that I'm earning my own money, I want to understand what I can and can't play with. I organized it like that. So I have my play money and then I have everything else. But to your point, I think that for me, so I definitely do value that because at the end of the day, to some extent, you do like have to live on money. Like that's just the way it is. But I think that in my experience, automating it is rather easy because it's not something that I'm always thinking about. I kind of focus on whatever else, and so I would say finances are kind of like I would say maybe even like a quarter of my safety net. I think for me, and I promise it is not because we said this in the last episode. It's just something that I really really value. I love optionality and safety net in my books because optionality can be so broad. I think that in truly for my safety net, I want to be in a situation or not want to be, but if I were to be in a situation that my life to the current present day for some reason collapsed, I had the means, whether it be financially, relationship wise, even my skills, that I could in theory build a new life, whether it be similar to what I was currently living in or completely different. I just had the means to do so. So I think it's obviously portable skills, strong relationships, people I can call and rely on, and also within me, like if you can't trust yourself, who is your safety if not you, you know? So
No,
yeah.
absolutely. And I like that as well. I think that my first thought was finances, and I always think of
Which is
finances
super
as a
valid.
safety
It
net.
is really valid.
And I think it was following the theme of our previous episode, but I do like also making sure that we do talk about people and people relationships and having that at the forefront. This is a bit random, but we were talking about before we started recording was how we've become as humans a little bit too dependent on AI, even for conversations. And
Yeah.
so we do, I think, need to talk about making sure that humans and the interactions that we have are just as important as everything else. So I do like the fact that you mentioned that.
It's kind of an underrated comment because I feel like, I mean, we are social creatures, whether it be in a social manner or it's just, you calling your sister, me calling my brother, just like having those people that we can rely on in situations. You feel like you're not carrying the burden yourself. And I don't know, life just seems more full when there's people that you can, whether it be the good things or the bad things, just experience these not really hardships, but ships with.
No, no, absolutely. And I guess the follow up question that I have for you, and maybe more so for me as well, but are finances always part of a safety net? And do you think that even with an unstable financial situation, you could still be with a safety net?
So I think yes, and that is because I think that in itself, we Liz and I were hypothetically talking about a situation actually, which is kind of what we're talking about now, is that in theory, if you had all of your finances sorted out, or you lost your not lost your job, but you were able to just step away from your job, is that your ideal life? For me, it's not. I think that finances are a fraction of it because again, everything is bought with money. But I also think, just as we were talking about, like people having a routine, like having a purpose is just as important as being financially set. What do you think?
I would agree with you. I think the example that I used when we were talking beforehand is if you were making, let's say, $100,000, you had a job that you didn't necessarily dislike, but you also didn't like that much either. You had enough money in your retirement to be okay, and your savings were enough to get you through if you quit or you got fired from your job for, let's say, 6 months. Would you
Mm,
be happy? Is that your safety net? I don't think I necessarily would be. I think that
mm-hmm.
there's so many other things in life that we have to think about. For example, like you said, purpose. I think having something that drives you, and I think we talked about this in a previous episode, but making sure that there's always something that your heart is following and that you're always motivated and that there's
Yeah,
always something you can daydream about. I think that there's so much beauty to that. And so if you don't have that part, I would have a very hard time saying, yes, you definitely have a safety net. I think
yeah,
I would like to coin this, but maybe a happiness safety net. And what does that entail? And it's
yeah.
not just finances.
No, agreed. And I also think that if it's like a situation where it's like a misalignment, you quit your job because you're like, okay, I know this isn't for me, but I'm going to find the thing that's for me, then that's different because that's in its own a self journey that you can reflect on and you can comfortably doing it with like optionality and like the stability of being able to do it. But I think also if it's just like a situation where circumstances are unfortunate and you're forced to be in said position, but in theory you could be fine with that. I can't imagine myself in today's current day and age being content.
No, I agree with you. And I think, especially just always reading things on social media, there's always something going wrong in your life. And there's just so much negativity in this world that having nothing to look forward to and nothing that really drives you throughout the day, I think does remove that safety net from your life, even if, again, your finances are set. So,
I agree. I personally always feel like I like to work towards things. I think it's and not to say that you wouldn't be in that situation, but I think it's always that's why I know that we talked about this in another episode, but I think that being well rounded in a variety of ways, whether it be like your actual life or the things that you're interested in, or even I don't know, like it could really mean anything. I think is so important because you will constantly have those other pillars like continuing even while one can drop, and they can kind of skew and level the offset.
no, 100%.
Okay. Well, that is another episode from us. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in.